What's the most common problem in any romantic relationship? Is it communication, conflict resolution, money, sex, expectation? I'll answer that question in this video, and I'll tell you how to solve it.
So let me give you a scenario that in one way or another has shown up in my counseling office hundreds of times over the years. Here's a couple, we'll call them Sarah and Jake. And Sarah wants Jake to communicate more with her. So she texts him throughout the day, but Jake doesn't answer her texts. And she asks him at the end of the day how his day was, but he just responds in one-word answers. Grunts, mostly. And over time and lots of arguments with Jake about this, Sarah's come to the conclusion, I don't think that he cares about me. When they come into my office, they both start stacking evidence against the other person. And they argue over words in the text and what they mean, and who always feels ignored, and who always feels attacked, and who's too sensitive, who blows things out of proportion. And as you listen to them, you might be tempted to think that this is just a simple communication problem. Jake just needs to communicate more with Sarah and the whole thing will be resolved. But if it were that simple, Jake would already be doing that. You see, if you dig a little, you might find that the problem is actually much deeper than just communication. Here's the most common problem in any romantic relationship: the past and how it shapes your present relationship. Here's what I mean.
As you go through your life, you piece together a relational strategy that is a product of your own unique past experiences. Some of it comes from your natural personality, some of it comes from your family of origin and what you saw modeled, good or bad there. Some of it comes from trial and error in your previous friendships and romantic relationships. And then some of it comes from lessons that you've absorbed about relationships from the larger culture around you. So your relational strategy is a product of your past, and what you've come to believe makes a relationship thrive, and also what you have come to believe protects you from getting hurt. And the thing is, your relational strategy becomes so deeply instinctive, so deeply a part of you, that you don't even realize it's there. It's kind of like the operating system on your computer. It just does what it does to keep your computer operating, even when you aren't consciously aware of what it's doing in the background.
But in any romantic relationship, over time, aspects of your relational strategy will conflict with your partner's relational strategy. So for instance, if you could get into Jake's head, you might find that Jake is thinking, Sarah's always asking me 1,000 questions, and she wants to know where I'm going and what I'm doing and who I've talked to, and she checks my phone and she's always giving me advice. I feel like she's trying to control me. And Jake might be right. Maybe because of something that Sarah observed in her parents' relationship, or something that she experienced in a previous relationship, she might have a great deal of anxiety when people close to her get too far away. And so when she feels insecure in the relationship and anxious, her style tells her to go on the offensive and want more communication from her partner.
More, please.
And if you dig a little, you might also find that Jake had, let's say, an extremely controlling mother, or maybe he had some bad experiences with exes himself, which makes him overly sensitive to being controlled. And when Jake feels controlled, his relational style is to pull away. He retreats, he ducks, he shuts down, which then only amplifies Sarah's anxiety. It makes her go on the offensive, and you can see where this goes, into a downward spiral. The problem is that when they argue about this, neither of them are aware of how the past has shaped each of their relational strategies and how their past is now affecting their present relationship. And so they're really not arguing about the right thing. And here's how you can know if your past is affecting your present relationship. If you find yourself having perpetual conflict. In other words, an argument that you keep having over and over, but it never gets solved. So how do you solve something like that? Well, number one, you need to redefine the problem. Sarah thinks that Jake just needs to learn to communicate, and Jake just thinks that Sarah needs to be less controlling. In reality, for Sarah, this is an anxiety problem. And for Jake, it's about the fear of being controlled. And until they redefine the problem, they'll just argue around it. They're only dealing with the tip of the iceberg, not the issues that are really below the surface. Now, you may need help in the form of a counselor to help you identify how your past is affecting the present. And don't be ashamed if that's the case. It's not a sign of an unhealthy relationship. In fact, it's a sign of a very healthy relationship that two people love each other enough and care about each other enough to say, we need objective help to resolve this. Number two, once you've redefined the problem, every time that it surfaces, you need to communicate about the issues that are beneath the surface. Sarah can keep pounding on Jake to communicate more, and Jake can keep ducking the problem, but that's never going to solve this perpetual conflict that they have. Instead, Sarah needs to tell Jake when she's feeling anxious, and Jake needs to tell Sarah when he's feeling controlled. And number three, both need to be willing to change for the sake of their partner. That's really what love is. For instance, Jake needs to say something like, Sarah, I love you so much that I don't want to make you feel anxious like you have in the past. What are some ways that I can communicate with you that will help reduce your anxiety? And Sarah needs to say, Jake, I don't want to make you feel controlled. That's not healthy for you. It's not healthy for us. Instead of getting more aggressive and more controlling, I'll tell you when I'm feeling anxious. And I'll also be open to you telling me when I'm going overboard and letting my past affect our present relationship. And then number 4, they need to come up with concrete behaviors to break their perpetual conflict. And undoubtedly, they'll have to keep revisiting it and fine-tuning it as time goes by. Until they do those 4 things, they'll find themselves locked in this perpetual conflict that over time will create resentment or even contempt, and it's almost impossible to come back from contempt in any kind of romantic relationship. Here's something I always tell couples that I'm working with. If you put black ants and if you put red ants in a jar, they'll be fine. They'll coexist with each other. They won't fight. They won't attack each other. But if someone comes along and shakes up the jar, the black ants will start attacking the red ants, and the red ants will start attacking the black ants as if the other ants are the problem. But the real problem isn't the black ants or the red ants. The problem is who's shaking the jar. And I always tell couples, when you find yourself attacking each other, you need to figure out what's shaking the jar. And more often than not, you'll find that it's the past affecting the present. If you like this video, please hit the like button, subscribe for more videos about all things communication and people skills related, which also includes romantic relationships. Comment below with a question or a topic that you'd like for me to communicate about on this channel, and then share this video with someone else if you think that they could benefit from it. I'll see you in the next video.